If you're having problems getting sharp photos with your Fujifilm X-T30 Mark II, or you just find all of the focus features a little overwhelming, all the different focus modes and autofocus and manual focus features, we're going to learn all of that in this lesson, which is a free preview lesson from my X-T30 II tutorial course. This course goes into all of the different menus in this camera, walks you through each one, goes into all of the focus and exposure tools and how to customize your camera. Each video has a text outline. There are some PDF downloads that you'll find in the course, and then a little test at the end to assess your understanding. You can watch even more free previews of that course at photocourses.link/xt30ii. And if you do want to go ahead and get the full course, use the code TUBE20 for 20% off. So let's get into it, how to use the focus system in the X-T30 Mark II. Before we learn about our exposure modes, I want to spend some time going over how to focus using this camera. We're going to start by looking at single shot autofocus, or AFS. If you're photographing stationary subjects or subjects that are moving around but they're not changing the distance to you, so they're not moving towards you or away from you, then single shot autofocus is the mode that you're going to want to be in. In single shot autofocus, when you command autofocus, the camera is going to search for a focus lock. Once it gets that focus lock, it's done working. It's not going to try to figure out the autofocus anymore, no matter how long you keep that shutter button pressed. So you put your focus area over your subject, press the shutter button halfway, confirm the focus lock, and then press the shutter button all the way to make the photo. To get into single shot autofocus, move the focus lever on the front of the camera to S. When you are in single shot autofocus, you're going to verify that by looking for AFS in the lower left corner of the display. To change your AF mode or your focus area size, you can go into your AF/MF setting menu and then select AF mode. You can also shortcut to this menu by programming a custom function control to AF mode, and we'll look at how to do that in an upcoming video. If you set your AF mode in the AF/MF setting menu to all, as I suggested earlier, and you have the focus lever setting set to edit focus area for either push or tilt, you'll set your autofocus mode while shooting just by pushing or tilting the joystick and then using the command dial to cycle through the different AF modes and sizes. Go ahead and set wide. That's a pretty good starting point using the wide autofocus area. You'll know that you are in wide autofocus area by seeing the white hash marks around the corners of the display. When you press the shutter button halfway to command autofocus, you'll verify that you have an autofocus lock by seeing green squares over the areas where the camera has decided to focus. You'll also see a green circle in the lower left corner of the display where AFS was. And if you have your AF beep volume turned up, you'll also hear the autofocus beep to let you know that you have a lock. A bad lock is indicated by a red AF square with the exclamation point and AF on the display, and in the lower left corner of the display, you'll see a blinking white dot. If you have a bad autofocus lock, reasons for that could be that there's not enough light to get autofocus, there's not enough contrast to detect any kind of contrast for autofocus, or you just may be too close to the subject. So search for an area with better contrast, more light, or back away from the subject. So now go ahead and try this out for yourself. Set the aperture to A, the shutter speed dial to A, and the ISO to A, and select an auto ISO program. Set the focus mode to AFS. Set the AF mode to wide. Use the joystick and the rear command dial if that's how it's set up and your AF mode is all. Point your camera at something, press the shutter halfway, verify the focus lock, and then press the shutter all the way to capture the photo. When you did that, were the green squares over your subject, over the area that you wanted to focus on? I hope so, but sometimes wide isn't discerning enough. Sometimes you need more precise control over choosing the entire screen for your focus. So in these situations, the zone and single point autofocus modes are a lot better to give you more precise control. The zone area takes up approximately 1/4 to 1/2 of the screen. You can change the size of that zone using the command dial and move it around the screen with the joystick. This is best if you have a stationary or semi-stationary subject in one portion of the display. And then you have single point, which gives you a really small point for better precision in choosing where to focus, like on an eye. And again, you can move the single point around the screen and set different sizes with the command dial. To get into any of these autofocus modes, you can go into the AF mode menu and select zone or single point. To change the sizes, go into the AF MF setting menu and select focus area, or push or tilt the joystick to edit your focus area. You can use the command dial to change the size and the joystick to move your focus point around the screen to where you want it. So now try this out for yourself. Go into either the zone or single point autofocus mode. Change the size of that zone or single point. Move it around the screen to where you want it to focus. Press the shutter button halfway, verify the focus lock, and then press the shutter all the way to capture the photo. The next focus mode is continuous autofocus, or AFC. This is best when you're photographing moving subjects, especially subjects that are changing the distance between you and them. The distance to your subject is very important for accurate focus, so if that's changing, we want our autofocus solution to be updating constantly. And especially if you're doing burst shooting, so you're taking a sequence of photos all at once, AFC will keep up with that and make sure that autofocus is continually updating while you press the shutter button. To get into this burst mode, set the drive dial to CL or CH. Don't forget to set your drive back to S for a single shot when you're done with the burst mode. Continuous autofocus is also good for when you want to recompose your framing but stay locked on a certain subject. So the subject isn't moving, but your camera is. This can still maintain a lock on your subject. To get into AFC, move the focus lever on the front of the camera to C. When you are in continuous autofocus, you're going to verify that by looking for AFC in the lower left corner of the display. The autofocus modes in continuous autofocus work more or less the same as in single shot autofocus. Zone is good for a subject that is either approaching you or going away from you, staying in the same portion of the screen. Single point is very difficult to use if you are using AFC to track a moving subject, trying to keep that little point on your subject, and I wouldn't really recommend it. Wide in AFC is called tracking, and when you are in tracking, you'll see a small box in the center of the screen that you can move around with the joystick. This is where the autofocus system is going to start tracking a subject. So you put this box over your subject, press the shutter button halfway, and the camera will attempt to track that object as it moves or as you move the camera. So this is a much more dynamic autofocus mode where that focus point will update with where your subject moves in the frame, whereas the other autofocus modes stay in the same location on the screen. And a note of caution about tracking, while the technology is quite impressive, it sometimes does make errors, so be aware of that. While using continuous autofocus, you'll see parentheses in the lower left of the display with a green dot inside the parentheses to indicate the camera has verified a lock. If you want more control over your focus, or for whatever reason autofocus just isn't working, you can go into manual focus mode and try focusing yourself. To get into manual focus, move the focus lever on the front of the camera to M. When you are in manual focus, you're going to verify that by looking for MF in the lower left corner of the display. Being proficient in manual focus does take some practice. I would encourage everyone to try it out because there are times where manual focus is the better tool to use. Thankfully, Fujifilm gives us some assistance to help us use manual focus much more precisely. The first one is Focus Check, where we can zoom in on the point where we want to focus. To activate Focus Check, push in on the rear command dial. You can use the rear command dial to change the magnification level of this zoom, and then use the joystick to move it around the screen. So go ahead and try this out for yourself. Go into the manual focus mode, activate focus check, use the joystick to move it around to where you want to focus, use the rear command dial to change the magnification, and move the manual focus ring to refine your focus in that area. Push the rear command dial to leave focus check, and then compose and press the shutter button to make the photo. We also have some manual focus assist modes. Go into the AF/MF setting menu and then look for MF Assist. Standard is nothing, no assist at all, just the plain image like we saw in the last exercise. Digital split image slices the frame into horizontal slices, and when the image is out of focus, those slices will not align with one another. As you bring the image back into focus, now those slices are going to start to align. I recommend setting the monochrome split image here because it's just easier to see than color. This mode works best when you have a lot of vertical lines. Because the image is split into horizontal slices, misalignment of vertical lines will be much easier to see. The digital microprism is like digital split image, but on a much smaller scale. So you're going to see this digital prism, and when the image is out of focus, all of those little squares are going to be misaligned and very obvious. As you bring the image back into focus, those squares will line up and just sort of disappear. This one's a little bit harder to use, but certainly has an application in certain scenes. Focus Peak Highlight will outline areas that are in focus in a bright color. This mode works great for most all scenes, and you can choose from a couple of different colors here. Just find the color that stands out the best against your subject. So if your subject is red, I probably wouldn't choose a red outline, maybe blue, because blue contrasts against red. You can also choose a sensitivity level. High is going to give you very bold colors, but will outline areas that are maybe not in exact precise focus. Low will be harder to see, but it is only going to outline those areas that are in absolute precise focus. I just use high. You can cycle through all of these modes by pressing and holding the rear command dial. We also have the back autofocus button. If you press the AFL button, it will command autofocus while you are in manual focus mode. Wherever you move that box around the screen, that's where it's going to command autofocus. So you put that box over your subject, and instead of rotating the manual focus ring, press that back autofocus button, and you will get an autofocus lock without ever having left manual focus mode. It's like autofocus on demand in manual focus. Make sure that that back autofocus button is assigned to the function AF on, and we'll learn how to do that in the final chapter. And then you can set this to behave as either single autofocus or continuous autofocus when you press and hold that button in the instant AF setting found in the AF/MF setting menu. And those are all of our basic focus tools found in this camera. In the next video, we're going to look at all of the exposure modes.